So previously, or maybe currently, there's a policy to that you have to plant 100 coconut trees in your tax allotment.
Yes, that's a new policy, and it's not only to do with having food in a number of form, including coconuts. Coconuts is the tree of life in Tonga, but that the replanting scheme is the latest in many schemes of planting coconuts, because for many decades drying coconuts and exporting them, that is copra, was the mainstay of the economy of Tonga. For instance, my grandfather planted coconuts and harvested them and turned the nuts into copra and exported overseas, and that's how he earned his living, money to build his home, pay school fees for his children, contribute to the community church. Yeah. So and that replanting scheme that I talk about was put in place as a public policy for agriculture all over the country by the late King Taupa'aharabo IV, the father of the current king, Tupo VI. Tupo IV was a man of great vision, a great leader, and great intellect. He was Minister for Education, and in that portfolio he established Teachers Training College for Tonga, systematized the training of teachers, and also he established the Tonga Copra Board. That was the board to look after the exporting of copra to overseas destinations and all of that. And the introduction of banana into the country as an export product. So for many decades, Tonga was exporting bananas to New Zealand and adding on to the stability of the economy and the well-being of the country. And it's still up to now. Agriculture is still the industry with the highest percentage of income for the country. But in reality, actually, the main and best export of Tonga are its peoples. Tongans have migrated in mass, starting in the early 60s and especially the late 60s to New Zealand, Australia, Hawaii and America. And they go there, work there in a number of ways, clean the street, clean the yards, work in factories, like in the case of New Zealand, and then send money home to their families, to schools, their former schools, to their villages. And so the economy of Tonga is being maintained and upheld, kept floating by remittances. That's money sent by Tongans overseas. Now Tongans are now 3 generations in Tonga, in overseas. The migrant generation, their children who were either born there or taken there very young, like in the case of the photographer of this video. And then they have their own children born in overseas, but they are still Tongans. And they all contribute. Our coming here is actually a great contribution to the economy. We pay the hotel, we buy local products, we visit places, we visit families, we contribute to community activities and so on and so forth. So it's interesting, a new development in tourism in Tonga is the returning natives.
Right.
Tongans born in Tonga but live overseas, and they also bring their children and their grandchildren, like those guys sitting at the back of our car.
Or even Tongans born overseas that don't regularly come to Tonga, right? Like if they even come for a while, they'll treat this as a tourist destination. Or
Tonga to them may be just where their parents come from.
Right.
But if they are taught well, they will have a love for their roots, the culture, positive aspects of their culture, their family values, love, respect, hardworking, honesty, justice, helping others.
Yeah, like one thing that we were that I've been talking about with some friends is that Tonga has similar issues to other countries, like social ills, but there are some things about the society which aren't reflected in other countries. For example, we don't have a very high crime rate, and part of that might be because of the sense of community and belonging in Tonga.
I think we might have a low crime rate compared to other countries. I don't know the exact stats, but there are some not so positive trends in Tonga.
Yeah.
For example, more organized crime.
Right.
The importation of drugs.
Yeah.
There's a loss of respect and love for elders.
Yeah.
And extended family members. The erosion of those Tongan values contribute to a rise in crime, a rise in behavior that contribute to the fragmentation of the social fabric of society. But I think Tonga is still a relatively peaceful, loving,
sure.
Community.
Yeah.
The village of Tonga, that's where I was born. I was born there on about the 6th of July 1954. And today I just met in the blowholes this elderly man. He is 77. And he said he knew my grandfather, the Reverend Kamperi Taufa. We fond memories of his great oratory and sermon and spirit of service. And when he met me, because both first met him, Paul, my wife, and Paul told him who I was and why we came and all of that. And he said, I know, is it Kamperi Taufa? I said, yes. And he said, I know Kamperi Taufa very well. We still remember him with fond memories of his oratory, eloquence, and spirit of service to the church. And Paul called me and I went up to him and he shook my hands and we kissed on the cheek as the Tongans do. And he said to me, welcoming me, he said, and it means you are welcome to the land where your umbilical cord and placenta is buried. Burying the umbilical cord and the placenta and afterbirth, where you were born, is a physical and practical way of connecting you physically, spiritually, mentally, and culturally to the land. And that is the philosophy, the way of knowing, and the Tongan concept of whanua, which means humanity and the environment are one. We do not live outside the environment, we are part of the environment. Therefore, we should look after the environment in return with appreciation what Mother Nature, what the whanua gives us. It gives us its all. Food, shelter, medicine, beautiful scenery, spirituality, a healthy relationship in every sense of the word. That's what whanua is. And in New Zealand over the last 10 years, I evolved a model called whanua, which I reworked again and call it whanuaola. It's a holistic well-being approach in a framework which encompasses all the 6 dimensions of well-being. mo uilere a sino atamai laumari koloa atakai mo ungara fafonua. The well-being of the soul and spirit, the well-being of the mind, the well-being of the body, economic well-being, the well-being of our culture, the beautiful values of one's culture, whether Tongan or other cultures, and the well-being of the ecology or the environment. That's what Fonuaora is.
Yeah, so can you just talk about like the poverty, the rubbish that we see littered around? And when I talk about rubbish, I'm just talking mostly about plastic materials that are just like from food and other things that are just littered all over the ground. And then you have the existence of like beautiful gardens that people care for the presentation of their homes, and they care for the land. Like, yeah.
And there are a number of factors. One is that the distinction between organic rubbish and inorganic rubbish. We Tongans traditionally are used to putting back organic things back to nature because we know it will decompose.
Yeah, that's right.
And then plastic, chemicals and things like that have been introduced to the country in a number of forms we are not used to. So our attitude towards rubbish
is the same attitude
as organic.
Right.
We need to educate ourselves.
Right.
Not to throw away inorganic rubbish into the environment because they will not, decompose back into nature. So that's one factor.
Yeah.
There's also another factor. The fact that we have lost our wisdom, our care for nature. If you go back to records of navigators, of explorers who have come to Tonga and have recorded our way of living, you'll find that their story is that when they came to Tonga, the people were very healthy, well built physically. They have sports. Not only that, but they have great governance and leadership. Tonga was a kingdom already, and navigation, astronomy, fishing, farming, and all of that. Homes were beautiful. There were food to eat and plants to decorate the home, and it was quite a well civilized society, and people were very healthy and of good nature. So if you go back, for example, to the records by Captain Cook and his crew and Abel Desmond and all of that, you'll find that there was a well-organized, beautiful, healthy Tonga in those days.
Yeah.
So over time, with the impact of other ideas and values, we have lost many of our knowledge and many of our values. For example, the concept of a home garden. Before we formed villages, people stay in their garden allotment. So you farm and you live off your land and you live with the land. It was beautiful. I know that because I grew up in my small island. That's how many people used to live there. But also, we are connected to the world economy and trade and all of that. And we are a small land mass, and yet we import many things that the capacity of the environment to manage that. It's a small place.